Jami Amerine, author, speaker, artist, wife, mom, and friend. This week's episode is called Grace, a simple look at an impossible God. Today's episode is brought to you by Jennifer Willerton, independent beauty consultant, the only person I trust my face with. Let's get this started. Hello, this is Jami Amerine, author and blogger at Sacred Ground Sticky Floors, and today we're going to be talking about grace, a simple look at an impossible God. Why is he impossible? Well, he's actually not impossible, but it's kind of a hard concept to wrap our brains around, grace. And this is going to be a grace space where we're going to talk about things that maybe you haven't heard before or that you've heard and maybe haven't thought about in this light. Grace is something that I said or something that I knew about, but I didn't understand the depths of it. And by all accounts, it's the most unfair religious, don't use religious, I can't stand that word. The most spiritual journey that I've ever been on. It is utter and complete freedom. So I want to start by saying this. Nothing can separate you from the love of God, which is from Romans 8:31. If you want to know lots and lots and lots of things about grace, read Romans or, well, anything that Paul wrote, because it's just grace in your face. But grace, as it was first explained to me, was I was taught mostly about it by John Sheesby from Liberated Living Ministries, which I will link up in this podcast, and Andrew Farley, and I will link him up in this podcast also because, oh my word, I can't even tell you what it was like the first time that I heard both of them speak on grace and the freedom of knowing that nothing you do, nothing can separate you from the love of God. And the biggest barrier to a true relationship with God for me was all the things that I thought I had to do to make God happy. All the things that I thought I had to do to please him. And Andrew Farley, one of my favorite examples that he ever uses is the swivel chair Jesus. I do something good, I pay my tithe, and he turns toward me. And then I say a bad word, and he turns away. And then I go and pick up a new foster baby, and he turns toward me. And then later that night, Justin and I get in a fight, and he turns away. So if you think about him in those terms, all you can really picture is this God that is just basically dizzy and a little bit of nausea going on, because he doesn't just have to deal with me. He has to deal with all the people that are disappointing or pleasing him, and he's just swiveling around in this chair, round and round and round he goes. Where he stops, nobody knows. So when I sat down and listened to these podcasts or these teachings on the message of grace, I was completely undone by this one thing that I say all the time, and that is the blood worked. It just worked, girls. There's nothing you can do that will separate you from Jesus. Once you've said yes to Jesus, you fall into the arms of Jesus and you belong to Jesus, and nothing can separate you from him. He loves you. You're his daughter, which is a whole nother thing that I think is so important. You know, when your kids come down in the morning for breakfast, even if they were up all night or you have a fight the night before, or they're failing chemistry or whatever, what do they have to do when they walk down the stairs to become your son or daughter? What is the requirement that makes them your son or daughter? Go ahead, I'll let you answer that question real quick. Nothing. There's nothing that they have to do. That is who they are. The very essence of who they are is your son or your daughter, your child. And what we've done, I think, in our religious practices is that we've built this fortress of becoming, this place where we have to become something in order to be his son or daughter, and we don't accept our full inheritance. And in doing so, we've built this wall that we can't really get to him, so we can't really experience him, so we're not really loving him, we're just at him. I think I said it in Stolen Jesus, I wasn't worshiping him, I was worshiping at him. I was trying to earn something. I was trying to make something happen. I was going to make this God love me. And then I would start over. And I would start all over all the time. So the next time there was a retreat, I would go and I go, this time I'm going to get it right. And I'm going to be better. And everybody's going to be happier. And everything's going to be perfect. And we won't have to worry about this anymore because this time I will be daughter. Not realizing the whole time I was daughter and that he loved me and nothing could separate me from him. The freedom that I've gained in this is so exponential. It's so amazing that I cannot shut it off and I will not go back. So, it's like, and I always use this example. So if you want to fast forward, go ahead, but it's the perfect example to me of, for women, churched up women like myself, who was bent on getting to know him and being the ultimate woman, the ultimate Christian, the perfect wife, the perfect mother, the perfect daughter. And so every morning I would set my alarm for the same time, and it's 5:00, maybe sometimes 4:45, and I would get up and I'd get my Bible and my highlighter in my bag, and I had all my little things and the pens and the markers and the little Bible flashlight and the scripture reference and all the things in the study. And this time, this is going to be it. But then something would happen, like somebody was up all night throwing up, or we had a foster placement that wasn't sleeping, or I was worried about something, and so I would shut my alarm off. And when I would shut my alarm off, what would happen? I would then wake up a little bit later, not have my alone time with God, and think that I was in trouble. And I would tell everybody, I didn't have my alone time this morning, which I will insert here. Love my alone time. Love to be alone with the Lord. Love to have that time where I can actually hear and experience him. However, I was legalistic about it. And in that legalism, I had built a fortress between he and I where he loved me unconditionally. There's no catching up to the cross. The blood worked. There is nothing I can do that is going to make him turn from me. And in the same regard, I don't have to worry about whether or not he is turned toward me, because what am I? I'm his daughter. So I don't have to get up every morning and go, do you still love me? Do you still love me? Do you still love me? Are you mad? Are you mad? Are you mad? Which is what I was doing all the time. So my scripture that I really want to talk about today, though, is Romans 6:14, which is, for sin shall no longer be your master, because you are not under the law, but under grace. And I think this is paramount in stepping forward in grace. And we will talk a lot about grace on this show, because I think there's a lot of facets to it that people have questions about, and they want to know, what about this? What about this? What about this? But the basic raw bones of it is that once grace took over, once Jesus was that sacrifice, once that veil was torn and there was nothing else that could separate us from the love of Jesus, there was nothing else we could do. No tithe amount that we had to pay, no casseroles to take, no volunteer work, no Bible study. None of that counted toward what God needed from us for us to be face to face with him and without condemnation, and only his child. And when we are sin focused and we're law focused, what we're doing is we're putting everything back on us. So, but I never want to speak for you, so I'm going to speak for me when I say this. When I was focused on me and all of my shortcomings and how I was going to change and how I was going to be different, and this time I've got it. This time I'm always going to work out. This time I'm always going to spend time in the Word. This time I'm never going to yell at my kids. This time I'm only going to eat low carb foods. Those were actually made up laws, but I still counted them toward whether or not he was approving of me. Nothing can separate you from the love of God. Nothing can separate you from the love of God. Let's say that one more time. Nothing can separate you from the love of God. So sin focus is actually self-focus. Whereas when we're focused on grace, we are only focused on him. And here's the thing that happens when we're focused on him instead of us. And when we're focused on him, we want what he wants. And I can honestly say that the opportunities that I've had to want what he wants are not always quite comfortable. They really aren't. There's been a couple situations where I was put in what I call a Jesus love situation, where he's asked me to do something that is outside of my comfort zone. One of my favorite stories is actually not my story, but Beth Moore tells a story about that she was in the airport sitting, waiting for a delayed flight, and she noticed an elderly man sitting over by himself in a wheelchair. And she said his hair was just this ratty mess. And she heard God just blatantly go, I need you to go brush that guy's hair. And she was like, there's no way I'm getting up and going and brushing that guy's hair. And she couldn't help herself. She was worried that it would be presumptuous. She was worried it would be rude. And she was worried about brushing some strange dude's hair in an airport. But unable to contain herself, she reached in her bag and grabbed her purse, and she walked over to him and she said, "Excuse me, sir." And he said, "Yes." And she said, "I am so sorry, but I felt like I was supposed to come over and ask you if I could brush your hair." And he bursts into tears, and he's about to see, maybe it's his wife or his daughter that he hasn't seen in a really long time, and he's a mess, and he was unable to get himself pulled together before he got to the airport. He was very sick, and she sat there and brushed this stranger's hair. Talk about unbearable Jesus love. But when we're totally focused on what we want and how we are going to look and what it's going to look like for us to behave a certain way, how are we ever going to hear what he needs us to do to be his hands and feet? Seriously. So I can empathize and sympathize with that story. Since I've been on the grace train, I have had those things happen to me where it was awkward and uncomfortable. However, I will tell you, I have never been rebutted. When he asks us to do something, he knows. And when we're in tune with him and we can feel him, he knows. And I would even take it to this extent. In foster care, which some of you that know my story know that I went into it with the mindset of the if then Jesus. If I do this, then he'll do this. If I do good things happen. And if I do good things, nothing bad will happen. And that never works. So just FYI, that's proof right there that we can't catch up to the cross. And in this life, we will face hard times, and he will be there with us, and he's overcome the world. However, it's probably going to stink like armpit. So, in that journey with him, I have been most challenged by this. So I went into foster care with this mindset: I don't want to get hurt. And in foster care, everybody that you ever talk to that is in foster care, that's the first thing that they say. People will say to them, "Oh, I love kids too much. I couldn't do it because I'm afraid I would get hurt." And the issue with this, like I said the same thing, so I'm not criticizing. I'm coming to you from a place of equality. I understand it is scary and you could get hurt. Probably will. But the thing about saying no out of fear of getting hurt is basically saying that you cannot bring yourself to trust God for restoration. And so you're not going to let him say the thing that challenges you. You're not going to let him ever have an opportunity to say, "Hey, I need you to give away your last $10. Hey, I need you to go brush that guy's hair. Hey, I need you to open your home to so-and-so," because we can't hear him over the loudness of I, me. So when we step away from that and we realize that a yes to him and a total belief in him and a total embracing of this grace message where we are not self-focused anymore, but we are completely focused on him, which is easier. It's easier, friends, to do this when we realize that it's not about us accepting it and us changing, but it's about us just saying yes. I'm going to say yes to this. I'm going to believe that I am righteous. I'm going to believe that I am daughter. I am going to say yes to the wholeness of Jesus Christ. And I am going to believe that I am who he says he is. And there's no more of this, I'm so awful. I'm so awful. I'm so awful. I need to change. I need to change. I need to change. It's just Jesus. The focus is totally on the cross. There is this little crack that will begin to come into your foundation, and that crack will get wider and wider with brighter and brighter light that is going to bring you the abundance of your inheritance. And that inheritance is Jesus Christ. He is who he says he is. And I will say this when it comes to me, I don't want to. Believing God, believing in what he says about who you are in Christ is the catalyst to doing brave things. And all of that will seep out into every single aspect of your life the minute that you say yes. Yes, I believe in this grace message. Yes, I believe that this God is as amazing as he says he is. And yes, I am totally focused on him instead of me. We can't change ourselves, guys. We can try. I know, I've been there. And we might, knock off 10 pounds, or we might be able to fit into a different jean size, or we might be able to reestablish our marriage. But without him, we are nothing. And as long as we continue to be self-focused and self-motivated, it's nothing. I said this recently in another interview. Before I got dunked, before I got saved, I went under the water completely hopeless, completely broken, completely without any hope of ever being different. And I came up, and the very first thing they said to me is, okay, now we're going to take you and you're going to sign up for all these Bible studies so that you can quit doing this, 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 and this, because now you need to be perfect. And I remember thinking, the only problem with that is the only real change that I experienced in self is that now I'm wet and my mascara is running down my face and my hair needs fixed. I couldn't fix myself before I got wet. How am I going to fix myself now? And that's where we're missing the message. Dunked and saved means changed and full on grace. Embody it, embrace it, and believe me, we're going to talk about it again. But before I go, let me just say one more time, nothing can separate us from the love of God, Romans 8:31. And for sin shall no longer be your master, because you are not under the law, but under grace, Romans 6:14. Hey friends, Jesus be all over you, and I will see you next time.